The alarm clock buzzed loudly, dragging him out of sleep, as always. His hand fumbled for the snooze button, the cold metal surface a shock against his warm skin. It didn't matter how many times he hit that button. It was always the same. The day would come, no matter how much he wanted to stay buried in the comfort of his bed. Slowly, he sat up, rubbing his face and blinking into the darkness of his room. The familiar grogginess settled in, like it did every morning. He stretched and tried to shake off the haze, but the thoughts that had been waiting for him returned immediately. The feeling of a life lived without direction, a life filled with moments but no real purpose. He glanced at the clock. It was time to get up, time to face another day. He was just 28 years old, but he feels like he lived this life many lifetimes. With a deep breath, he stood and moved toward the bathroom. He looked at himself in the mirror, the same face, the same tired eyes staring back at him. How long had it been like this? Weeks? Months? Years? The lines on his face seemed to grow deeper, his shoulders a little more hunched each time he caught a glimpse of himself. Another day, he muttered quietly to himself, the words hollow. He didn't feel any excitement for the day ahead, only the weight of what was coming, the weight of more of the same. In the kitchen, he moved through his morning routine automatically. Turn on the coffee maker, grind the beans, boil the water. The familiar sounds of the morning were almost comforting in their consistency. He didn't have to think about it. His movements were mechanical, a reflex more than a choice. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a small pleasure in an otherwise predictable morning. He stared at the dark liquid in his cup, watching the steam rise and fade away. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to just sit there, to be still, but the stillness didn't last. He glanced out the window, watching the streets below slowly come to life. People were already heading out, their faces hidden behind phones, lost in their own worlds. He was just one more person in the crowd, another faceless figure heading in the same direction. It was as if the world was moving without him, and he was simply caught in its wake. The commute was always the same. The crowded bus, the noise of the city, the blur of faces passing by. It was a strange kind of monotony, where everything felt like it was moving too fast, but too slowly at the same time. He found himself lost in the sea of people, his thoughts adrift. The bus stopped at each intersection, the doors opening and closing like a mechanical rhythm. He watched people get on, get off, each of them caught in their own version of the same routine. Do they feel like this too? He wondered. Do they ever stop and ask themselves if they're really living, or are they just going through the motions like I am? Arriving at the coffee shop, he joined the line, waiting for his daily dose of caffeine. He didn't need to think about it. It was automatic. Iced latte, no sugar, extra shot, the same as always. The barista greeted him with a smile, but it felt rehearsed, like it always did. They exchanged pleasantries, small talk that never led anywhere meaningful. He took his drink, nodded in thanks, and walked over to a nearby table, finding a seat by the window. He stared out at the world moving by, watching people walk past, all seemingly on their way to somewhere important. What are they all thinking? He wondered. Do they ever stop to question where they're going? He took a sip of his coffee, the coldness of it sharp against his tongue. It was bitter, like the thoughts swirling in his head. He could never quite shake the feeling that there was something missing from his life, but he couldn't figure out what it was. He was good at everything, but nothing ever seemed to stick. The workday was another blur. He sat at his desk, facing the same computer screen, clicking through emails, responding to requests. It was the same as always routine, predictable, and somehow suffocating. He couldn't help but wonder, is this it? Is this all I'm capable of? The work wasn't hard, but it drained him in ways he couldn't explain. He didn't feel alive here. He felt like he was simply existing, passing time until the end of the day. The meeting with his boss was just as predictable. His boss praised him for his work, telling him how well he was doing, how valuable he was to the team. The words sounded empty, like they had been said 100 times before. He nodded, pretending to appreciate the compliment, but it didn't feel real. Nothing felt real anymore. "Great job," his boss had said. But what did that really mean? Is he really doing great? Or was he just good enough? "I'm not great at anything," he thought. "I'm just good enough." The ride home was no different. He stood at the bus stop, watching the city pass by, a blur of lights and movement. The day had been long, and he was exhausted. But something caught his attention as he walked past the small grocery store. He noticed an elderly woman working behind the counter, moving slowly, but with a kind of grace. She didn't hurry. She didn't seem to rush through her work. There was something calming about the way she moved, something peaceful. He watched her for a moment, wondering what her life had been like when she was younger. Had she always worked in this store, or had she once had dreams too? What was she like when she was my age? He wondered. Was she content with the life she had built for herself? Or had she once wanted more, only to settle for what life had given her? He couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for her, not because of her age, but because of the quiet acceptance in her eyes. Had she given up on her dreams? He wondered. But as quickly as the thought came, he pushed it away. He had his own life to deal with. He didn't have time to think about other people's lives. But the image of the woman stayed with him as he continued his walk home. A quiet reminder of the choices he had yet to make. That evening, he sat on his balcony, watching the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, but it all felt so far away, as though he were observing life from the outside. He leaned back in his chair, staring up at the stars. There was something comforting about the night sky, something vast and infinite. He had always been drawn to the stars, to the idea of something greater than himself. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to dream. What if I could change things? He thought. What if I finally followed one of those dreams I'd buried so long ago? He closed his eyes, letting the cool night air wash over him. The city felt so distant now, so small. There was a whole world out there, a world full of possibilities. And yet, here he was, stuck in the same place, doing the same things. "I want to find something worth living for," he whispered into the night, the words barely audible above the hum of the city. He didn't know how to begin, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he had a choice. A small spark of something deep inside him had been reignited, just enough to keep him going. Tomorrow, maybe he would take the first step. Maybe tomorrow, things would be different. But for now, he allowed himself the space to dream, to wonder what might be.